Welcome back to Chapter 15. We're going to talk about problems with pesticide use. So we established what pesticide use is, and now we're going to talk about problems with it. So the perfect pesticide, if it was to exist, would be inexpensive, only affect the targeted organism, have a very, very short half-life, meaning it could no longer be problematic very quickly, and then break down into harmless materials very quickly. But we do not have this perfect pesticide. So we are facing a dilemma here of allowing the organisms that are pests to continue to live and reduce our yield, or try to increase our yield but have to have some of these other things as consequences. So persistence is basically when pesticides become attached to a small soil particles and are easily moved by wind and water, and these persistent particles may be distributed throughout the world from local applications. So farmer A in town A is able to spray, and those small soil particles with the pesticide could make it to form B just by wind and water and the way it travels. So biomagnification, as a reminder, is an increasing in the levels of fat-soluble substance found in bodies of higher trophic level organisms. So there's not that much at the bottom layer. There's not that much at this layer, but if you go up one trophic level, there's going to be more, and there's going to be more, and then there's going to be more as you move up the trophic level. And a really good example is the DDT. So pesticide resistance is insecticides that only kill susceptible individuals. So then those that aren't susceptible are able to pass on their genetic information. So think about a organism that's a pest in a cornfield. That organism that is susceptible or not insecticide or pesticide resistant are going to die. And then those that are resistant are going to live. And then they're going to be able to pass on their genetic information, resulting in the next generation and the population change over time of a more pesticide-resistant population. So then as a farmer or as a community, you have to apply more pesticides at higher concentrations or change the pesticide cocktail at higher concentrations to combat this. This picture just basically shows a bunch of cockroaches and how when pesticide resistance takes place, you could spray pesticide and it's not going to kill these guys. They have a mutation in their DNA that is able to allow them to continue to live, and I feel really bad for whoever's home that is. An additional problem with pesticide use is the effect on non-targeted organisms. Okay, so you have this pest, it's destroying your crop, but you also have these organisms living in your field that aren't bad and are in fact actually helping you and helping your crop yield, and you're actually killing them as well. So most pesticides are not species specific and then therefore kill beneficiary species as well as pests. Many kill predators and parasitic insects that normally control pest insects. So think about that. Here's a pest. Well, it's usually consumed by something else. That something else is also eliminated by the pesticide. Think trophic levels, less higher organisms than lower. When pesticides are used, they also kill higher organisms as well as their populations take a lot longer to rebound. And of course, there are human health concerns. So with pesticides, acute poisoning is a huge exposure during application. Bhopal, India is an example. There were 6,000 deaths due to acute poisoning of pesticides. And then chronic poisoning, which is just the low-level exposure of quantities, very constant, is also a human health concern. So if we have established that these are such a problem, why are we using pesticides? Well, pesticides, for an economic reason, increase crop yields and profits. For health reasons, insecticides can curtail many diseases, such as malaria. 500 million people suffer from malaria. 2 million of those die every year. So by controlling mosquitoes, we can reduce the malaria deaths, and as a result, over the last 50 years, 50 million people have been saved by malaria, so not dying of malaria by using insecticides. So there's a really strong case to use pesticides, even though they're really, really detrimental. So there's okay, so this conventional practice isn't working. Let's go back to organic farming. Well, that's the deal. All farming before the Green Revolution was organic farming. Animal manure and crop rotation was provided for soil nutrients. Crop diversity prevented pest problems. Manual labor controlled insects and weeds. But as a result, it's really, really expensive. So some farmers are returning to organic farming due to chemical problems and costs. Organic farming yields slightly lower yield, but uses 40% of the energy conventional farms use. So there's a really good argument to do organic farming and then support organic farming. As most of us know, that if you go to the grocery store, you're going to see organic food next to the conventionally grown fruits and vegetables, and the organic food is going to be more expensive. So if you're on a budget, here are the ones that you want to focus on. The Dirty Dozen. These are the organisms that you want to try to buy all the time organic, and these are the ones that if you're on a budget, you can let these go. And think about permeability of skin. That's the difference between this. Permeability of skin over here, the pesticides are going to be able to get in very easily, but over here, they're not going to. So if you're on a budget, think about the Dirty Dozen as organic, and the rest of them you can let go. So as we've learned more about pesticides and insecticides, we've gone to an integrated pest management. So these are using a variety of methods rather than just relying on pesticides. There are two fundamental premises of IPM, or integrated pest management. One, it's to management rather than eradicate. So we're trying to manage these pests instead of killing them all. And then farmers will allow a certain amount of economic damage to the crops before they spray pesticides. Okay, I'm going to let 5% of my crop go before I actually use a pesticide. And that number has been worked out. The other thing is to require the farmer to be educated about the use of different methods, including reducing his or her pests. Several methods are sex attractants, so pheromones. Another one is natural predators, like using ladybugs or hawks. We also have Bacillus, that is a bacteria that destroys the guts of insects. There's natural pesticides, and then genetic engineering, which some people go, oh, that's scary, but it is a technique that requires less pesticides being put on our fields. So that's something to consider. So the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act provides the federal control of pesticide distribution, sale, and use. So the EPA was given authority under this act to study the consequences of pesticide usage, but also require users to register when purchasing pesticides. So this is just to have more control over this. All pesticides in the U.S. must be registered by the EPA and assures that pesticides that will properly labeled and be used in accordance with specifications and do not cause unreasonably harm to the environment. Here's a food for thought. Average homeowner uses 10 times more synthetic pesticide per acre than a U.S. cropland. Now, you have to think about, well, my house is only a quarter of an acre, so the statistic might be skewed, but just think about that and the amount of land and the amount of pesticides we're putting in out there. It's not just the farmers. Here are some farmers work in the field. This is during harvest. Going in there and working, gathering what is being harvested. So this is an important aspect of our food production. So because we're using insecticides and pesticides, many changes in the population structure have happened so that the species that were previously not a problem have become a problem. 100 of the 300 most devastating pests in the U.S. were secondary pests before insecticide use, but since insecticide use, they are now a major pest. So we are changing what our pests are. Here's a picture showing from how pesticide species resistance is increasing, and the number of species over time is increasing due to resistance to pesticides. What I'd like you to do now is go back to that original drawing that you made at the beginning of this lecture on part 1, and I'd like you for your summary to write about that picture, fill in all the gaps. If you have any questions, be sure to ask me those. All right, thanks. Bye.